I don't have to do anything with this, or what do I have to do? Nothing? Good, okay. I'd like to call this regular school board meeting to order. It is October 17th. We started our meeting today at 4 p.m. doing facility tours of the transition house and then moving to Gustner. Thank you to Amy Bennett, Luke Anderson, and Jerome Wagner for giving us those tours and showing us the ins and outs of our buildings. We are now located in the Gustner Elementary School for this meeting because of the tour. I'd like to recognize all those in the audience. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, and our flag is over here. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And I'd like to also mention that Melissa is joining us by phone today. Diane, would you read the school board norms?
Gladly. The board developed norms are to share and respect varied opinions and speak with a united voice once a decision has been reached, to prudently prioritize resources in a student-centric manner that aligns with the district's strategic plan, to exhibit a mindset of continuous improvement through adequate preparation for meetings and a commitment to board education, and to commit to assessing board effectiveness, to ensure high-quality governance for the staff, students, and community of Jamestown.
Thank you, Diane. Under public communication, we received a thank you card from the family of Mary Sargent. We also had an application for public communication, and I don't think they're here yet. If they come later, we are in a different location today, and we will just find a time to let them come speak. Are there any conflicts of interest? Are there any conflicts of interest? Are there any conflicts of interest? No conflicts of interest declared. Moving on to our consent agenda. At any time a board member wishes to pull something off the consent agenda, they're able to do so. Is there anything that someone would like to remove from the consent agenda to be placed on the regular agenda? If not, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? Motion by Gail. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Jason. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Moving on to our regular agenda. Under recognition, Jason, would you read the recognition?
Sure. 25 years of service. Mrs. Marlene Langbin began working for JPS as a Title I para at Lincoln Elementary and moved to Gustner Elementary as an elementary teacher.
Well, I think it's very appropriate that we could honor your 25 years of service here at
Yes.
Gustner, where you worked in 4th grade, so.
Yes, congratulations on 25 years and your service to our district. Moving on, under correspondence, nothing under correspondence reports. I see we have Will Nelson here. Please come up and share the student council report.
All right, I have a little less of a report from last time when we reported on homecoming. That was our big undertaking in August and September. And also, I'd like to say congratulations to Mrs. Langbein. She was one of my 4th grade teachers. Yeah. But I don't have a lot to report actually from the JHS Student Council this time around. This month we've been working on merchandise for our different classes and for the JHS Student Council as a whole. We've been just looking at our budget and trying to clear up things from homecoming and see where we stand for planning events later in the school year, whether that be Snow Week, prom, other events like that. The big project we're trying to start right now is a community-wide food drive that we're hoping to do sometime around the holidays. Normally the social studies department at the high school does a food drive, and we'd like to try to work with them on that. A couple years ago we did something called Stuff the Civic, where we worked with all the different elementary schools, local businesses, and the high school to try to raise a lot of food and money. And that was pretty successful. We're looking to do something somewhat similar to that, but maybe a little modified. They rented out the Civic Center, made a giant J out of the donations. We really liked how that looked for the picture, but we don't know if that's quite practical to do again. Just to have all of our members move the food in there, make a J, and then move it out. Took a lot of time, but we're looking to do something similar to that. Otherwise, there's not a whole lot on the docket for the student council right now. That's all I have to report.
Are there any questions? Well, is there a state convention for
Yes.
student council?
Yes.
Do you know any information on that yet?
That should be December 12th through the 14th in Bismarck at the Ramkota. It's usually 3 or 4 days in December, and that's the information we have about it now.
And do you know how many will be able to attend, or do you have the funding to go? I guess?
That's actually something we were working on writing to you guys about. We have some issues with our budget that we wanted to bring up. And I'm actually working on a formal letter to present to you all at a later date, but I was going to work with Mr. Gale or Mr. Gardner, our advisor, and Mr. Roltson before I presented that to you all. Just with our budget, we don't actually have like a standing budget that is funded by the high school. It's completely self-funded, which has caused a lot of problems in the past because when we plan our events, we have to take into consideration how we're going to fund ourselves in addition to funding future events. And we feel that's a bit of a conflict of interest because the student council in our bylaws, our mission is to provide leadership and service. And we think we're kind of distracting from that mission when we're having to sustain ourselves rather than fully putting that funding raised from students and community members partially towards ourselves and not fully returning it to the students. But I'll further elaborate on that in an official communication to you all. So
Thank you. Look forward to hearing that. And Gail, I think you had a question?
I know when you mentioned merchandise, just if you ever want to send it out to board members, I'm an easy target for things like that. I'm very much known as one, so,
all right,
you know,
sounds
just
good.
remember to maybe include us, because I always love a good Blue Jay shirt.
Sounds good. All right.
Any other questions for Will? Thank you, Will. We really appreciate you coming to share with us, and we look forward to your next report.
Perfect. Thank you.
Next up, we have our food service report. Cindy, come on up. We've had a lot of changes in food service, and can you just walk us through some of those and how things are going? We
I will
appreciate your
certainly
time.
try. We've had a few changes right off the bat. The lunch program is no longer serving an alternative meal regardless of the unpaid balance. Students are served the reimbursable meal. However, we don't allow them to have extras or seconds or anything like that if they are negative. We start warning them at about $10 positive. Once they go negative 15, we do calling, emailing, blackboarding, sending out letters. That seems to be somewhat effective, and we're sitting about negative $7,000. So we're kind of right in line with all the other districts. If a student does continue to go negative with no communication, we go to the counselors, the respective counselors, see if we can get help from them. If that still doesn't work, then I have a conversation with Dr. Luck to see how we can get those negative balances taken care of. So we are back to paid meals after 2.5 years of, sadly, no paid meals. We had about a total of 440 free and reduced applications. 96 of those are free, 105 are reduced. Not approved were 108. And 2 years ago, prior to me being here, we had a 50% increase in free and reduced applications this year. So, and like I said, the past 2 years have been free and not many people filled out those applications. So here we are, back to the National School Lunch Program, so.
Thank you for your work, and I know there's been a lot of changes kind of just thrown at you, and so we appreciate you navigating those and helping us
Thank you.
out in that area. Are there questions from the board? Yep, go ahead, Aaron.
I know when, last year it was an issue, but with just a general supply of food and getting what you need, where do you stand with that?
It's still about the same. It's a little better than the last 2 years during COVID. Today was ordering day and it didn't go well, but there's usually something we can substitute, but we do tend to change the menu a lot. Between breakfast and lunch, we're always switching things around, so, yeah.
So what kind of process do you need to go through then, you know, as far as if something's not available, you have to go and get, quotes or something, agreements for other businesses, or are you working with technically the
I'm working with the ones that, like, the food service director prior to me bid on, and so I go through those avenues, and, if I can't get it through Cisco, or I can't get the whole grain, so to speak, I'll go with, like, white bread, and it's perfectly okay, we have waivers, and
Right.
I just keep documentation of what I can and can't get to follow the standards, so. Yep.
Any other questions? Well, Cindy, thank you so much for coming up and sharing with us, and we look forward to hearing from you again in the future. So
Thank you.
I see that we have our, Tom, we have our public communication, and we'll give you an opportunity to come share that, if you'd like to do that now.
Right now?
Yep, yes. And I know, I didn't have a chance to visit, come on up to the podium, yep. And,
I go to the podium?
yep, come forward and state your name and address, and Tom, I know on that form you filled out, you saw that there was a 3-minute limit, so I'll just kind of give you a wave when we're at 1 minute, if that helps you.
All right, I'll try to talk quick.
My name is Tom Tracy. I'm a resident here of Jamestown. I'm a former public school superintendent. I was superintendent for 29 years at the Kensal Public School. I'm here because, even though I'm out of education now, I'm retired, I still care a lot about young people, want to do what's best for them. They're the future. We want to do the very best we can. The main reason I'm here is I have been told that the board in the future will have the option to adopt a policy where the curriculum materials, library books could be approved by a committee that would be made up of parents, school board members, administrators, librarians, teachers. And it's my understanding that that is not necessarily how especially library books are picked right now. So that's the main reason I'm here, to really encourage you to do that. That is really would be a very, very positive thing. It would be a very positive thing right now in lieu of some of the very, very controversial things that are occurring in public schools in a lot of the bigger school systems. And I just want to give one example of what's going on in the Valley City, not school system, but public library. There was a book there that was discovered by some parents that has become extremely controversial. And it's even hard for me to say this. The best way to tell you what's in this book is that this book is recommended for kids grades 11 through 18. Recommended they take it out, they read it, and they apply what's in the book. All right, so I'll start out with that. The book was discussed on the Chris Berg radio show, and I happened to hear that show. They had a parent there, they had a reporter there that broke the story, and the editor from the Valley City Times-Record. Here's what Chris Berg said about this book. We have a book here that is in the Valley City Public Library that is accessible to grades 11 through 18. We're going to talk about the book. I don't think I can quote directly from the book, and here's why. Because my radio station is covered by the FCC. If somebody would hear me talk about what's in the book directly, my radio station could be in trouble for obscenity. That's what he said. I'm not going to tell you what's directly in that book. I'm from the old school. There's ladies present. I wouldn't want to say what's in that book. And yet, this book can be checked out in the Valley City Library for grades 11 through 18. This book was highly recommended by a college professor at Valley City State College.
Mr. Tracy, you're beyond your 3 minutes. Do you want to wrap up your
Wrap up?
your comments, please? You're beyond 3 minutes.
Really? It went that quick?
3:23.
God, I thought it was like
So
30
I'll
seconds.
give you another few seconds to wrap up your comments.
Okay,
And then if
well,
you'd
I just
also
want to present that information to you and to recommend that you have that system in place, that where you would have a committee and you would have some direct oversight from parents on curriculum materials, library books.
Thank you for that information.
Thank you
And
very much.
Mr. Tracy, could you also state your address too for our records? Your
My address?
your address, yes. We
Oh,
have your name, but just your address.
Well,
So
Amy
far.
knows where I live.
She-
I'm right across the
then
street.
she'll type it to make sure. So thank you.
Yeah, 818 17th Street, Northeast.
Jamestown. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. Under, let me see, so we're moving back under our regular agenda. Under D, Board Education, Educational Competency, Required Drills and Protocols. Mr. Stillwell and Dr. Leck. Yeah, and you can go ahead and start.
If I could just lay the stage for this a little bit, as the board is aware, we set board education in July for the course of the year. In a fortuitous coincidence, we also had a fairly significant safety issue last week. So Mr. Stillwell was already asked to come here and speak specifically on drills and protocols. And he's gonna share a little bit of information there, not directly related to last week. If there are questions, I certainly can answer those, but I think those would be best directed towards myself. Mr. Stillwell is here to talk specifically about the middle school and just in general drills and requirements that all public schools undertake throughout a school year. So, thank you.
Well, thanks for the opportunity. This is it's always been a vital safety. Kids, when they feel safe, they learn better. And teachers feel safe, they're able to instruct better. So thanks for the opportunity. Safety is a primary requirement for all of our schools. It equals better learning opportunities. So what I'll just talk briefly about is our drills and protocols. And one of the things I really want to stress is effective drills. Okay, going through the motions, I think. If you remember when you were a kid and we had a fire drill and you just, I think that is, I hope in the past. When I say effective, I'm talking about, do we evaluate them? Do we ask questions? Do we involve the police department? We're so lucky with our school resource officer and the Jamestown Police Department to be so directly involved. It's easy to say to the SRO, can you come and, for instance, I'll give it as an example, can you come and time our fire drill? Or to call the fire department and ask about circumstances. How many chairs do we need? Depending on how many kids we have in wheelchairs and stuff like that. Those are the type of things we talk about effective, not just anybody that's has a bad ankle, stay in the room. The rest of us are going to go outside for the fire drill. So with that in mind and that we review and revise as we go, there's 3 types of drills that we are required to do. 4 fire drills a year. The first one is in the first 10 days. And for us, and I think I can speak for most of the schools, is really focused on a predetermined exit strategy. If I'm here, when the horn goes off, I go out this door. This year, Scott Iser was there and had a clock on and timed it to see how long from the time it went off to when everyone was out. After that review, they may include a fire location, okay? I'll just speak for the middle school. We kind of have fires in 2 places, that are pretend fires. We don't have fires. Kitchen, so then that group of students and teachers that are on that side, that stairwell is closed. And then our main stairwell, because that's what kind of the physical plant is, the 2 places we think are most likely to have a fire where we're gonna have to evacuate the building. That's what we do. Not everyone has that. So, and we might give them a clue we're having a fire drill, but we don't tell them where the fire's gonna be. So if that end of the building walks out there and it says fire here, they have to think on their feet, okay? And once again, then we evaluate that and say, okay, we need more of these. How do we do that? The second type of a tornado or emergency drill, there's 1 per year. Once again, it's reviewed, determine if this is where it's safe. One thing about tornado, do we have other places away from windows or where the building is more secure where we could move people? And once again, the police department is directly involved with that too and tries to help us out. And 1 lockdown drill a year. We were lucky, we had 4 police officers show up for our lockdown drill, including the chief of police. It was great to have their involvement, and I'd like to think that helped things last week that been in our buildings. They were there when we practiced, and we're able to deal with things better. So those are the 3 type of drills. Some other stuff that we do for safety is kind of a safety audit, and we discuss, are the doors locked? What's our visitor accessibility when kids are in the building? What are problem areas like hallways that aren't covered or where problems could happen? The physical plant, is there access to it? Can a kid get down there? Can a stranger get down there? Building communication is one that's come up quite a bit. Do our cooks hear the announcements? Does the central, when we have a lockdown drill, for instance, can the central office hear us? Okay, so some communication, just to kind of, what are we doing to make things safer? What could we do differently? We review the staging area. I call it a staging area. For the middle school, it's the civic center. So what if there is a fire? Where's the staging area? Where do we can't go back in the building. And for us, it's the civic center. I don't know what it is for all the elementary schools. I can't speak to that if it's churches or wherever those people would go. And at the secondary level, I can't speak for the elementary level. We do periodically have the police dog come through. That is pretty random. Once again, what I like about that is, once again, it gives one more police officer access to our building and know where stuff is and where the lockers are and things like that. So that, even though that's maybe looking for illegal substances, it does serve other purposes too, if anything else was to happen at our school. So I feel pretty lucky about, for the 3rd time, I think the police department's been awesome. And Scott, guys there, and our other SROs in the past have been great. So those are the 3 drills and some other things we do for safety. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Stiller. Are there any questions from the board?
Awesome. Have a great night.
Thank you. Moving on to superintendent's report. Dr. Lack?
Thank you. You have my written report. A few areas I'll just touch on. I have a superintendent timeline that I just kind of outlined how I would recommend proceeding during those timeframes. The updates on facility projects, those are still continuing on as are outlined in that aspect of the report, and as we've discussed in the past. We know that we're continuing our facility tours. Our next tour will be Lincoln and Roosevelt at 4 o'clock. And then that means our board meeting will be back in the Thompson Community Room. That's on November 7th. On November 21st, we'll be touring James Valley Career and Tech Center and then Jamestown High School. So we'll meet in the library at Jamestown High School for the November 21st meeting. Later on in the agenda, you will be acting on a resignation for our business manager position. I've said no many times, but she won't listen. It is time for that, and so that means it's time for a discussion for us on how as a district do we want to proceed in that position. We know that we've been very fortunate with Sally in lots of different ways. But one of the areas that we've been fortunate on is the different hats that she wears as a business manager and an HR director. Those both are very time-consuming, expertise-laden positions. So I'm not necessarily advocating for this, but I think the board and the district as a whole needs to have a discussion about how do we want for that position to be. Do we want to continue to have it be a business manager and HR director? That would certainly be appropriate. And again, I'm not advocating for one or the other yet. I have not myself taken enough time to really assess. We don't have a job description for an HR director, so these are things that would need to occur. I just think it's time, when we have a change, it's time for us to have a conversation about how do we want to proceed. So I would see 2 paths. One, we continue on as we have. We have a business manager and an HR director. That's a lot on any one person's plate. But Sally's proven that's possible to do, even with maybe some gray hair, but it's possible to do. The other aspect would be you might want to consider splitting those positions and have a business manager that solely focuses on those responsibilities that continue to grow year to year, especially in times like these when we have lots of federal dollars that make having two positions very challenging. And if that were to occur, you could then have a HR director, communications director, something like that, that could separate those 2 responsibilities out. Again, I'm not advocating for that. I just think it's time to have the conversation because as I've outlined in the potential hiring timeline later on in my agenda, or later on in my report, excuse me, that these are decisions in the next 2 months or so, probably in the next month, that we would have to have a definitive response to. Because we would have to write a job description, we would have to hire, we would have to post, and there's lots of work that would need to be done from a hiring standpoint if we wanted to shift gears. So I just want to make the board aware of it at this point, that while you're acting on that particular action item later in this agenda, you should be thinking as a board about how do you want to progress in that position. So I'm just sharing that more for information. If there's questions about the hiring timeline, I'm certainly willing to answer.
Jason?
So as of today, the plan is per this to just post a business manager, kind of see what applicants we get, and then go from there?
Great question. In absence of some different direction, my intention would be to post exactly what Sally's position is now. If the board at some point says, you know what, we want to go in a different direction, then we would work on a job description and work on a separate posting. And then we would have to determine what a salary range for that might be. Our position now is compensated as two positions. And so that would have to change what you're offering in terms of a compensation package as well. So I think there's a lot of things. In absence of any other direction, my plan would be to post business manager and HR director. If we wanted to take a different path, we always could do that and post another position. But that would be my plan for now.
Gail?
Have we had any feedback on that position from, communication from like JEA and staff on what some of their reactions would be to having the two different positions? If they, they would probably have the most interactions on a human resource level. If we do that, would we reinvent things too? Because now that we have things like the program we have with the village, and you said with communications, is there any way we could examine what that might look like, or if there would be jobs that someone has right now that would go somewhere else? What are other things what are districts our size doing? Some feedback on that. I know I'm kind of like the
We're in kind of
but
an
these are all things that went into my head.
We're in kind of an unusual situation because we are somewhat in the middle between a lot of districts. We are large enough to need an HR director, but maybe not large enough to have a sole position devoted to HR.
I think that's
A Mandan, for example, they need to have an HR director, they need to have a communications director. They're large enough that they have that. You could make the case that we may be somewhere in the middle between needing those. And so I think that there's a challenge there of just determining what it is that we need out of those positions. I think the place that we would start is having a conversation with Sally, which we have already begun a conversation in that area. And I think we vacillate between, yes, we need, well, maybe we shouldn't. So there's a little bit of ambiguity there in terms of what we feel we need to do. And you asked a question about involving others. We have a communications committee. That would be the place where we would have engage in a conversation with the JEA. And that's more making aware, hey, we're talking about if this is a position that's one position, or should continue in one position, or should be split in two. And that's really sharing for awareness.
And it's hard, I understand. I mean, back when I worked for the district, I always would tell parents that we're a large enough district to offer many things. We're a small enough district, they're not offered every hour, which is the rub. So I get that we might have the need, and yet, yeah.
Not quite the capacity.
Yeah, so we're in that not quite so sweet spot.
Yeah, there's a middle ground, I think, in this position, and that's why I'm bringing it up just as a point of discussion, that if there's a clear direction, we should have a discussion about it. In absence of clear, my intention would be to post what the position currently is.
Yeah, or are there other, and I'm sorry, I'm just going on here, but are there districts that have combined things that maybe we aren't thinking of now, where a grant writer with the HR, or opportunities that we're kind of too small, or we could maybe pull the need that we have?
Sure. If we do anything with splitting these positions, we would be adding FTE. And that's
the hard part.
where we need to be looking at is that feasible to do?
Or I'm thinking.
It's a lot to ask of any one person to do both positions,
It is.
but is it feasible to split? And that's where we're kind of in a middle ground area.
Are there needs we have that we haven't addressed that through a thing we could
Yeah.
make work?
Yeah,
I
and
don't
those would
know.
all be
I don't know.
FTE increase, likely.
Aaron, I think you had your hand first.
Yeah, I guess I'd support splitting it up if that makes sense, but to your point, not just simply adding an FTE, looking at a job description and seeing other responsibilities in the district and maybe rolling that together. One
What I was
concern that-
trying to say articulately.
One concern I would have is trying to fill Sally's shoes, is finding a good fit for finance and a good, or business manager, a good fit for HR. You look with the size of our district, I think we owe it to the employees of the district to, you know, do as good a job as Sally did in that HR role. So it's just, if you got the right candidate, sure. But I would support either way if you want, on your recommendation, so. And then, Sally, thanks. And it's,
Yeah.
I hope it wasn't me.
Yeah.
I kinda had an inkling it was.
Rob and I have had several conversations, so, no. But I just wanna say, when I go to meetings, the large school districts, the HR people meet and the business manager meet, and I have to clone myself. Fortunately, now sometimes we meet together and collaborate and stuff, but there is that, like Dr. Lex said, I can't believe I'm saying Dr. Lex, it is, we're borderline, we are not a, Bismarck, Fargo, but we are close to Mandan, and they all have. And it's just evolved, so much differently. In the last 3 years, I mean, COVID was a full-time job with the leaves, it's just changed a lot over the years, so.
Thank you, Sally. Jason,
Oh.
thank you for waiting.
Yep, I was just gonna kind of piggyback after Mr. Roberts here. I think the way we should really look at this is rewriting some job descriptions if there are talented people in the district currently who could assume some of those roles. Hire the one position and then kind of, cause if we can use the resources we currently have, obviously that's a plus, so.
Well, and I also just in thinking too, recruitment and retention is going to become a bigger issue. I hope it doesn't and it resolves itself. But that too could impact what our needs may be for HR, as some of these things, you have to explore options and other ways of employing that we haven't before.
And I touched on this, but I want to be really direct with it too. The other component that we need to consider is, in Sally's position, compensated as HR director and business manager. That would look different if those positions were split. That, both of those positions would not be paid at what that compensation range is. They would have to be, from a salary standpoint, probably a little bit lower on the business manager position, and then lower down from the business manager position for the HR director. I would think we couldn't, maintain the same compensation structure for both of those positions or even one of those two positions. There would have to be a consideration there, so we would need to look at all of those factors. Other thoughts out there on the positions? So I'd like to know a little bit about how, it would change how I proceed with a recommendation or how I would move forward in our next meeting.
Dan?
I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry, Dan.
Dan sounds the same.
You go ahead.
Okay, go ahead, Diane.
I think I would readily suggest that we go with two positions. What would concern me is if we would take what the salary is now and split it in two, but I don't think that would work. So there would be a revenue issue, but a finance issue, but it's just common sense for me to think that that is two different positions. And like Aaron said, trying to get the most qualified in each area is what we'd be doing. And the chances of it being in one person are very slim. So that would be my recommendation.
Or you could just tell Sally she can't retire.
Right.
I've tried that, before and it
Well,
hasn't.
we haven't approved,
Yeah.
we haven't approved the agenda item yet. Dan was next here, hold on, Dan, go ahead,
I
Dan.
guess, yeah, kind of a similar feeling on that, because you're looking, it's probably almost a unicorn to find somebody who could fill both those positions and do it adequately. You might be able to find somebody who does that, and the compensation would draw that kind of person in. I guess, do we have a feeling about, what that pool looks like, and when would we know that before we have to make a decision whether we split or maintain it?
You would find somebody with one and the skill set to learn the other,
Okay.
is what I would assume that you would find. You would find somebody with a business manager background, somebody that understands schools, has likely worked in a school, and could take on and learn the HR side, like Sally has done over her time here.
Because I was in payroll and HR, so it got tacked on to mine when I went over to the business manager.
Right.
And we may also look at, filling, I mean, the first need we need is the business manager position. We may just even, and regardless of who's in HR, there's some cross functionality between the business manager position, and so we could even just look at like a HR coordinator, or maybe even a half FTE or something like that too, just to support the job functions of the business manager too, so if we're looking at FTEs. Gail,
I
go
was
ahead.
gonna concur with that. I mean, I have a cousin who has done HR her whole career, and there was a period of time, quite a long time, when her kids were little, where she would have welcomed a half-time job. It would have been a great fit in a school district for her. So I think maybe even thinking out of the box might not be, a bad way to go. We don't know, there might be that person in our community who is just a fit for, like what you said, a half-time FTE, and then if the position needed to grow, they could maybe grow with it.
Have we considered just starting with the business manager with a wide salary range and then just seeing what sort of?
The intention would be that for now, to look at that, unless again, I'm given a sense that we wanna be going in a different direction. If we wanna split these positions, then I would be looking at writing a job description, bringing that to the board for approval and looking to post, positions. But we could certainly hire a business manager position with a wide range, see, cast the net, see what we find, and then, make that decision when we get to that point. There would be a gap potentially of some HR function that would have to be picked up somewhere, whether that would be in the new business manager position, whether that would be with me or somebody else in the business office, until that next person could be found. That's certainly possible to do that. I know that's Steve.
So, Aaron, I think Aaron is, Steve, go ahead. Go ahead, Steve.
I guess I don't have anything new, but that's the direction I would look to go, is see if you can hire a business manager and even see what how you'll feel them out too. But do you have any idea which position, if there were two positions, which one would be harder to fill?
I think the specific expertise of a school district business manager might be the bigger challenge, and the higher priority of the two for now. I think they're both important positions, but I think for now, that would be the more important. My focus would be there.
Good question, Steve. Aaron, go ahead.
And I think just other things to consider too is, bringing somebody on who wasn't in the district and now they're not learning an additional responsibility. They're coming in and they're learning that position. And then if we don't split it, it's learning two positions. And one's gonna get ignored, one's not gonna get done very well for a period of time. And I don't wanna minimize the importance of the HR function to the district employees. And simply stating that that's a half-time job, I would be careful with that, because that's an important service to the employees of the district.
Well,
And it is, it'd just be 0.5 FTE more than what we have now, so, I mean, it's, it would be.
And that's where I said,
Which-
if we
which-
do it, it's just not simply bolting on
Correct.
there's other responsibilities
Oh,
within the
absolutely.
district that would,
Yeah.
as a part of like what
Yep.
you had said,
Yep.
writing that job
Yep.
description, what does that
Yep.
look like? What other responsibilities that are coupled tightly, more closely to an HR function
Yep.
than they are to the finance side?
Yep. Go ahead, Gal, or Diane, go ahead.
To piggyback on Aaron, my impression has always been that an HR position is one that should be there Monday through Friday, all day, because of, sort of like being a radio dispatcher, you can't just disappear for half the time. But I may be mistaken on exactly what they do, so that's something to think about if it's what I'm thinking, an HR would do. The employees might need them anytime, Monday through Friday, from 8 to 5 or whatever. Thank you.
Gail?
Or if we could even see too, what is the range of business managers in our area? What is the what is the going rate for HR people in our area? How much more is that expense if we went with 2 full-time positions? Cause would we be starting them out at a lower pay grade? I mean, how much are we, it would help to know too, are we talking 100,000 more, or are we talking maybe 20? That could make a big difference too.
Steve?
We might wanna hold off on that, or Sally's gonna want back pay.
On February 1st, we can start talking. No. So I've gotten, I feel like, enough direction in terms of my next steps. What I'm hearing my next steps is it's worth it now, from a time commitment standpoint, for us to write a job description for a potential HR position and create a salary range that we can bring to the board at our next meeting for you to have a greater discussion. This is helpful for me to know there's enough movement there to say, now we need more information to make the best choice. So that is what we will plan for our next November meeting, that you'll have a couple options and a recommendation from me. So an option to keep them the same, and what would that pay range be? Split them out, job description, what would that pay, job descriptions, what would that pay ranges be, so you get a better sense. Good direction? Okay.
Yep.
Moving on in my report, you have, I've set an enrollment and facility task force meeting Wednesday, November 2nd, at 6 o'clock. That will be at the Thompson Community Room. So we'll begin those important discussions with that task force. Some needs for special education. I more just want to make you aware. A lot of work in this area. One of them, some of this information you have in front of you. Other things are just being shared for awareness. For example, you have a special ed technician that we are recommending for hire at Custer and Washington Elementary. If you remember, that was a position we did not fill. We had a half-time position split between 2 elementary schools. We were unable to fill that position. We did recruit a special ed technician to fill that FTE, and that will be between Gustner, with board approval, would share between Gustner and Washington Elementary. Those are our largest needs. And that would be for lack of a better word, an itinerant position. As the needs change, next year that might look like, Gustner and Roosevelt. The year after that, it might look like Lincoln and Gustner. It just depends on where the largest need is in that FTE. That doesn't mean we don't want a special education teacher or a strategist. If we can find that, that's great. We definitely have the need across the board for positions. So that's one piece. That has an MOU on it, just like all of the other special education technician positions. We requested through the Department of Public Instruction to be part of their apprentice program. That's in collaboration with Minot State University, in which you're growing your own. So if there are para positions that want to pursue and get a special education degree and could grow in that position and work here, transition from a para to a special ed teacher, we will support that and part of this program. So we want to be one of the first districts to go through and be a part of that apprenticeship program through DPI and Minot State. We are very much struggling to fill our para positions. We're looking at action planning on how we can best recruit and retain those positions. We are well aware of the need. We just need the action plan on what we can do. what strategies we need to put in place to have that happen. So it isn't certainly something we are ignoring, it's just something we haven't found the right solution for yet. The last piece, one other area that I think is really important, and I'm not ready to make a presentation on this yet, it's more along the lines of we are having conversations with community partners around our neediest students in terms of how we can best service those most time-intensive students. And we're having some discussions with partners about what that might look like, not just locally, but potentially hosting some kind of service in the region that could support needs beyond just us, because it is our most challenging students. That is a significant need, but it's not just a need in Jamestown, it's a need everywhere for high levels of support and service. And if there's an opportunity for us to repurpose staff and be more efficient for our staff, but also provide the best possible services for our students with special needs, especially our most challenging needs, then that's something that we want to explore. So Heidi Godot, the special education director, and I have had a series of meetings already involving potential partnerships that when we're ready to share a little bit more, we can. But I just felt as I was writing this other information, just wanted you to know as a board and as a district, as a community, we're aware of some of our challenges, but we're working on them. We're doing, we're looking to see what potential options exist out there to make sure that we can provide the best possible service.
With this, are we thinking of something like what Fargo has, the Explorers Academy?
Potentially, yes.
Is
Yeah.
it possible for any, I'd be very interested in taking a tour of that. And, well, my cousin actually works at it, so,
Yeah.
but I mean a formal one in this capacity, because I think they've had some success.
I am certain that they have,
challenges.
and I know that they have had challenges in establishing too, but that is a very important setting that exists for the support of our neediest students. So, you know, when we have a little bit more, when we've had a chance to vet all those options, so I can come with a plan instead of just a lot of questions and a lot of admiring the problem. But when we get to a point where we have some potential solutions that the board needs to mull over and take some action, I'm still working on it, but I want you to know that it's on our radar.
Awesome.
So with that, I would stand for the questions.
Any other questions for Dr. Luck? Jason?
I apologize, I should have asked this when Mr. Stillwell was here. A big part of this is just maintaining that, the school safety thing, just maintaining that heads up that we're on target with what we need to do. And of course, after a situation like last week, it's always a good opportunity to review. Will have those discussions taken place with building administrators as far as what we should do?
That's a great question. So anytime you have an event, debrief is an important piece of the event. You know, I shared this a little bit earlier with some. This is an expectation. An emergency situation, especially like one that happened last week, your expectation has to be perfect. We have to do it perfect. We can say, we did awesome, we did a great job, and I'll tell you, our staff, law enforcement, our students, expectations were clear. They did awesome, but it's not 100%. We have to strive for perfect. And so anytime we can learn something from a process, we have to do that. And we have to take advantage of what became a very elaborate drill to learn a little bit of something. Because if we don't learn anything from it, then, you know, that's a missed opportunity. And so we have had a series already of debriefs where we've asked every building to give us feedback, what went well, what didn't go very well, what are some gaps, you know, what are some potential solutions. And in some buildings that has had to be a little bit more robust than others. For example, in the high school, that's had to be a pretty robust data collection. That's going to be different than one of the elementary schools that was saying a soft lockdown. Those are going to be different experiences, and so we have to collect data in a different way. Later on this week, on Wednesday, the high school administrators and I will be meeting with law enforcement to do a coordination debrief And so we get a chance to see from law enforcement's perspective, what went well, what didn't go well. From our perspective, what didn't go well, what did go well, you know, and how can we expand or fix or address those different things. And we have a list, I have a list in my office already, even just from Amy and I having conversations. You know, from central office, what went well, what didn't go well, we need to fix that, we could have done this. I should have used this word instead of using that word because there was confusion. If I'm gonna do it this way, then how are we gonna communicate this message and how fast can that get out? Things like that. And so there's a series of localized debriefs that feed up into district level debriefs that feed up into the agency debriefs. So
Thank you.
yes, very important aspect of it, and we strive to be at 100%.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Steve?
Previous to this situation, maybe last month or something, we did some self-assessment on safety. Where does that go, or when do we get that back or learn from that?
So that's a great question. We are administratively in our administrative team meetings that we have monthly. There's an aspect of those that we want to have discussions about every meeting. And so those conversations happen at that meeting, which will feed into emergency planning, which will feed into policy change, but those are fairly localized to the administrative team to have conversations about what was in those assessments and how can we improve, what do we need to do. Some of that is what we talked about last administrative team meeting, for example, was facility changes. Well, we have a process to request summer projects. We do that every spring. Not all of these pieces make their way into those kinds of summer maintenance planning, and so they don't go anywhere. They're, hey, we really need to fix X. We were just talking in the facility tour at Gustner earlier about doorways that need to be addressed, for example. It's very easy if we don't track that facility need and that safety concern for it not to make its way onto that summer maintenance. So we want to make sure that there's a pathway to address all of those questions, concerns, so they can make their way onto that summer maintenance, so we can get them on our capital projects plan. We do have a safety schedule that they can be addressed there. So we've started to have those facility conversations now. We'll start talking about protocols. I guarantee you our events, our safety event last week will guide a lot of discussion we have the next time we meet again. But I guess in a more quickly answer your question, all of those the review process starts with the administrative team, and we have those conversations there.
Thank you, Dr. Luck. Any other questions for Dr. Luck regarding his report? Okay. So at our November 7th meeting, I feel like we can expect from you kind of some different scenarios of we need to hire a business manager, obviously, and then some different scenarios, whether HR director, HR coordinator, how that, some different options to kind of look at.
And I'll have two timelines.
Have a couple timelines.
I'll have two timelines for hire,
Okay.
one with a split, one with a.
Because we'll want to start moving forward with that, given the time that we have, because that'll be November 7th at our next meeting, so thank you, I appreciate that. Moving on, nothing under old business, F. Under G, new business, nothing under activities, number 1. Number 2, buildings and grounds. Is there a motion for the approval of change order request number 3 for the Jamestown Middle School? Motion by Gail, is there a second? Second by Steve. Any discussion? Aaron, go ahead.
Yeah, this one seems kind of nickel and dime on the total scope of work here. Do they have any detail on, that they provide on why they're requesting this as a change?
No, they didn't give different, it was just the second page just gave you what that shift was, so I'm not sure I completely understand.
So the
question.
description is 6 hours against AC units as a contingency item. What is that?
Okay. Though that was removing old air conditioning units from glass block.
They didn't plan to do that initially?
It was not in the, it was, anything that's on here they weren't in the plans that others reviewed that created the scope. the second page outlines some things that were that were covered in contingency, but others that are just covered in the allowances from consolidated construction. So the actual is 4,100 with the different add-ons, that's 4,464. You see the 14,000 on the second page, that's not all contingency.
Just the way this information is prepared, it's really hard to tell if this is an actual change against the scope of the project, or is this, again, it seems to be very nickel and dime on activities against a, multi-million-dollar program.
Sure.
So it's like, it's helpful to get some better definition on exactly what they're asking for and how it affects the scope of the project.
Yeah, so I will say that in our OAC meetings, that we go through each of these during that meeting, and they do talk about each of these items, like the brake metal that needs to be replaced in the different middle school classrooms, or why those needed to be done. So I can ask them for additional information if you'd like.
Isn't that the marble that when they got into it was soft?
Correct.
Yeah.
We didn't have pictures this time. Normally they give us pictures, we didn't have pictures on this.
Well, in the
Yes.
progress reports,
Sorry,
there's
sorry,
pictures.
sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I looked in there, I didn't
Yeah.
see the linkage between what they're asking here versus what was in
Sure.
the pictures, or, so it's hard to, yeah, this is
This
obviously
is a
a change.
this is a tough one because there's a lot of different information. Even Jordan, when we walked through this one in the owners meeting, he said this is a confusing one because it's typically not all of this list of stuff. Some things in contingency, some things in various budget allowances. This is a little bit of a different case than others, but I can ask for additional information if people want additional information for each of those breakdowns.
I'm thinking, from my perspective, it's more, I think we need to address the process and not necessarily these individual items. Ambiguity isn't helpful when we're asking for approval for budgets or for allocations. So, being more specific, just in general, in the process of requesting a change and asking for board approval to fund that change, it's helpful to say, be able to point to why is it a change, as opposed to just what they're asking for in an ambiguous way. So, just in general process, I think it's
More specificity in the request to be clear of item and change of scope.
I'm sure when you guys are having your conversations back and forth,
Yep.
You have a good understanding of it, but what's put in front of us,
Fair.
again, is very ambiguous, and so it's hard to say, yeah, absolutely, let's go ahead and spend, taxpayer dollars on this one.
Sure.
Versus, no, this should actually be a responsibility of the contractor. I don't know, I can't make that judgment by what's put in front of us here, so.
Okay.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? Any other discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Number 3, curriculum assessment instruction. There's nothing under that. Number 4, finance. Is there an approval to submit choice-ready grants at Jamestown High School and James Valley Career and Tech Center? Motion by Gail. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Jason. Dr. Luck, you want to talk about this a little bit?
Well, this is a continuation of other choice-ready grants, so that's, I can certainly answer any questions if you have any. Just wanted to make you aware that in the next meeting, you'll also see one from the special education unit. They just were not ready before this meeting, so you'll see another one of these, but it's for the special education unit. That'll go along with choice-ready grants, applications for it, Jamestown High School and JVCTC. That's all I just wanted to share.
Any other questions? And thank you.
I would just
Yeah,
like
go
to
ahead, Gail.
thank them for all
Yes.
the work in putting this together. I know grants can be rather time consuming.
So we have a motion, second. Any other discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. Under B, there's general fund balance for your information. C, monthly financial reports. They're in the drive. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion by Aaron. Is there a second by Gail? Any discussion on the monthly financial reports? Sally, anything to add? Any questions? Okay.
I can answer any questions. No, I haven't. No.
Motion and second. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Number 5, personnel. Approval to hire Holly Lee as special education technician for the 2022 to 2023 school year. This motion can include approval of the memorandum of understanding for special education technician number 1. Is there a motion?
So moved.
You want the whole thing, Gail? Both parts? Okay. Motion by Gail to approve A and number 1. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Aaron. Any discussion? We have a motion and a second for approval to hire Holly Lee as special education technician for the 2022 to 2023 school year and subsequent approval of memorandum of understanding for special education technician. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. B, approval of the resignation of Sally Ost, business manager, on January 31st, 2023. Is there a motion? There's no motion. There's
I will move.
motion by Gail,
Second.
the second by Aaron. Sally, how many years have you worked for the district?
It will be 30 on November 12th.
30 years for the district. Thank you for your service. And there's a motion and second to approve your resignation. Any other discussion?
Do we get cake?
We'll arrange for some cake.
Want to amend the motion?
Thank you for the opportunity to serve this district. I've worked with a lot of great administrators, a lot of great boards, and I want to thank Dr. Leck.
All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved.
Thank you, Sally.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for your dedication. Thank you for your dedication. There's a superintendent evaluation timeline, so if you can, Amy will let you know, and I'm sure Amy will call me. Yep, I'm one of them, to complete these. And then I'll review them with Dr. Leck, and we'll bring it to the board on the November 7th meeting for approval. Number 6, policy and procedures. A, approval of the second reading of policy DKEA, exit interview. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Dan, second by Steve. Any discussion? There being no discussion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. B, approval of amended regulation HCAA-AR, informal bids on proposals process. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Gail.
Second.
Second by Jason. Any discussion? And then this follows along with what's required statutorily as well, so, okay. Any other discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. C, approval of amended policy ACAA, emergency closings. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Dan,
Second.
second by Diane. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. D, approval of amended policy ABBE, displays of religious objects or documents. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Aaron,
Second.
second by Dan. Any discussion? Any discussion? There being no discussion, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. E, approval of amended policy ACBC, use of animals in district schools and in curricular programs. Is there a motion? Motion by Gail. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Aaron. Any discussion? Go ahead, Gail.
I'd like to thank you for updating the language. I like how you do that, and I think that you've made things much clearer, so thank you.
Any other discussion? We have a motion, a second of approval of amended policy ACBC, use of animals in district schools and in curricular programs. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. Number 7, tuition. A, approval of tuition agreements. Number 1, approval of a tuition agreement for a 7th grade Pingree Buchanan student to attend Jamestown Public Schools. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Gail, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Jason, any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. Nothing under other. Items for future agenda, do we have any items for future agenda or our retreat? That's been scheduled. Okay, if there's any items that you would want to be added, please contact Dr. Luck or myself.
And I have received some, so thank you.
Meetings to be scheduled. A, the North Dakota School Board Association Convention, October 27th and 28th, 2022 in Bismarck. B, District Improvement Committee meeting on Thursday, November 3rd, 2022 at 3:30 PM in the Thompson Community Room. C, School Board Facility Tour on Monday, November 7th, 2022 at Lincoln and Roosevelt Elementary at 4 PM. D, School Board meeting on Monday, November 7th, 2022 at 5:15 PM in the Thompson Room in the middle school. And I think SEAC was rescheduled for the first Wednesday of November at 11:30 in Castleton at the Governor's Inn. Under monthly superintendent evaluation, section 4, curriculum and student support services, and section 6, operations and resource management. There being no further business before the board, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.